This is the ClickClock company dashboard. It's the screen that appears when you first enter ClickClock. There are a number of cards on the screen. The top one shows you the company name. Three others side by side shows you the number of employees, the number of ClickClock terminals, and the number of mobile apps that are currently registered with the system. The menus along the top are the adjustment menu, which shows you two separate views of the adjusted employee times. There's a reports menu, which shows you the reports section of the program, a scan screen, which shows you the raw scans from your employees, a configuration menu with a number of entries, and an employee status screen that shows employees who are currently clocked in, clocked out, clocked in on a job, on break. An online help file, which we will show you here, and a kind of administrative menu that shows you the company name, allows you to update your profile, to sign out of the program, a billing screen, and an about screen that shows various information about the program. On the adjustment screen, we have adjustment menu. We have two separate views of the program. We have a work period scan adjustment, which shows a single employee for the whole work period. In this case, we've got the program set up for 14 days. And so we set the start date of the screen. We will set it to the 20th of August because I've got some test data in the program at the moment. So here we see all of the adjusted times for a single employee, Bill Anderson. We can select a different employee here and see the times for that employee. All the dates are down the left hand side of the screen, the total number of hours in the pink column, and each of the pairs of times in the yellow column here. If the employee had clocked in and out multiple times per day, then those times would appear along here. I think our first employee, I've added some extra times so that you can see what happens there. If you hold the cursor over a cell, sometimes a menu will appear, sometimes a little pop-up box will appear showing you further information. So on the date column, you can see the raw scans. Now, raw scans are the actual time that the employee clocked in and out. Even though we've got 7 o'clock till 7 p.m. here, 7 a.m. till 7 p.m., the employee probably didn't clock in and out of those times, and they're the raw times. So we'll see here they actually clocked in at 6:46 and they clocked out at 7:34, and those times have been rounded, and in this particular case adjusted as well, manually adjusted to those times there. And then I have manually added 2 extra times here. What I'll do, I'll use another item on this menu here to reset the times for this day for the person, because this is what would normally happen. I had manually added those times before. So we've got a total of 12 hours here, which is comprising 12 hours of normal time and a half-hour break. You can see that the difference between these times is 12 and a half hours, so that's why they add up there. So when you hold your cursor over the total column, it shows you the totals for each of the pay categories. This one here we can see 10:45, 9:15, 9 o'clock. Yep, so we can see those. When we hold the cursor over these times here, it shows any job, department or location information that has been recorded against a job. So we have another view of the times. We have the daily scan adjustment, which shows all of the employees for a single day. And again, we'll change it back to August, because I know that that's where I've got some data. So all the different employees here for this particular date. And exactly the same before, the menus. So here on this menu, we didn't show you that before. You can delete the pair of times, you can edit the in time, you can set these times as leave, or if you double click on a time, you can adjust both the times here, and you can add break, job, department and location information if necessary. Let's assign these particular hours to job. We'll go 2000. I'll show you later how those times are put in. So now if we hold the cursor over here, we can see that those hours are going to be assigned to job 2000 when they're exported. All right, that's the adjustment screen. Now if we go to the report screen, we can see that we can set up a date range. And again, I'll set it back to the date when I know I've got some data. So the 20th of August to, I think it's the 2nd of September is going to be 14 days. We can select whether we want to have all work groups or just selected work groups. In this particular database, we've only got one work group called default, so it doesn't matter which one of those we select. Then we go to our selected report. We can select an adjusted report or an unadjusted report. So unadjusted is the raw times, not particularly useful except when you're checking times. For putting into your payroll program, adjusted times are normally what you would need. We can preview that on the screen. And here we see Bill Anderson, employee number 5, work group is here, and all the entries for a particular day. If they move over in this particular case to the second day, the second page, and we see here the totals for that day. So the second employee is Elizabeth Brown, and the information there continues on. So we go back to reports again. We can also see, we can export those reports to PDF, so we can keep a permanent copy. The other section of this screen is exporting to a payroll program. Again, we need to select our date range. So we'll say the 20th again till the 2nd of September, and we click on payroll export. The download has started. So in this particular case, with this particular export module, and we'll get back to some details of that later, the export is via a text file. So the ClickClock program saves a text file to the downloads folder on your computer, and then in your payroll program, you import that data. Okay, our scans column shows raw scans. Earlier today, I made 2 scans on a terminal for Roger Dean within a few seconds of each other, so we don't see much here, but we can see that if we sort this on time, we can see that Roger clocked in at 11:23 and out at just 9 seconds later, and didn't record any jobs or informations and things. If this particular employee had clocked in and out using a mobile phone instead of a terminal, there would also be a GPS icon here, and we could click on that to show the location that the employee was in when they clocked in or out. Our configuration screen, we can see employees. So we have got 11 employees here. Our license limit is 25 employees. All the employees are listed here. So we have the name, the employee number, which is the number that is exported to the payroll program. We have the work group that they're in, and we have their email address. The email address is really only used for people who use their mobile phone to invite them to join the system. So you don't need to have that. To edit an employee, we just click on the name, we can change anything in there, and we can update it. We can create a new employee, we get the same kind of screen. We have to put in a name, an employee number. We don't necessarily need to put an email there, and we can set the work group. If there were multiple work groups defined, we could set them here, we could choose from them here. and then click on the Create button to create a new employee. Okay, we can also deactivate employees. So if we decide that our test user down here has left the company or something like that, we can deactivate them, update them. They will then disappear from this list and they won't appear in reports and things anymore. If we want to see deactivated employees, we can click on this button here and we see a couple of users have been deactivated. The second screen on the configuration is payroll. So here we can set up pay categories, which are the tags that are exported with times to your payroll program. We'll just sort those so they're in a better order. So we've got normal time and 3 overtime categories. We can create new categories if necessary. We might have other overtime settings. We might have different times, different groups of times, different categories of times. Work groups is where we set up the main settings of the program, the rounding and all that kind of stuff for particular groups of employees. In this case, we're only using one work group, so all employees will have the same settings. If we click on the work group name, we can see those settings. So we've got a work group name and a description here. We've got a checkbox that says this is the default work group that will be automatically assigned to all new employees. We have a work period, a rounding and an overtime tab. Work period here tab, we are setting the maximum work period to 12 hours. This is not a restriction in the program. It's used to help ClickClock work out if scans have been missing. So if an employee clocked in at say 8 o'clock today, forgot to clock out tonight and clocked again at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, it would look like they'd done 24 hours of work. That's not what we want. So if the period exceeds, work period looks like it exceeds more than this figure, they will be like automatically clocked off, so to speak. We have got an option to set auto fixed daily hours. So we can say by ticking this option that where employees work between 7 and 8 hours, for example, we want to automatically set that to 7.5 hours as our adjusted times. We can also automatically remove a meal break. At the moment we've got it set up to take a meal break of half an hour after at least 5 hours have been worked. Any kind of times can be put into here, or you don't have to set it at all. In our rounding options, we have set all the clock-in times to round up to the next 15 minutes. So if an employee clocked in at 10 to 8, their time would be rounded up to 8 o'clock. We can set round up, round down, or round to nearest time, and the options here are 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 10, 12, 15, 30 and 60. So at the moment we've got it set up to round all clock-in times up to the next 15 minutes. And we've also got a setting for clock out times. Actually, that one's not enabled. We will use rounding when clocking out. So when people clock out, their times will be rounded down to 15 minutes with these settings. And again, round up, round down to nearest, and also the quantities here. We also have window rounding, where we can set a particular window of times and have them become a certain time. So what we've got here, if an employee scans in between or out between 7:30 and 8 o'clock, then we will say that that's 8 o'clock. We can have a number of these settings, a number of windows. With this particular option, we are going to use the same settings every day. We also have day of week, where we can also add a weekday, so we can have different settings for each day of the week. So because I've changed that, I'm just going to save it here. We've also got overtime settings. So at the moment, we have no overtime settings set up. We have the option to use the same overtime settings each day, or we can use different overtime for different days of the week. We're going to stick with the same settings every day. So we're going to create new. We're going to set the base time to normal hours. We're going to set the first overtime category to overtime 1, the second one to overtime 2, and the third one to overtime 3. We're going to say that overtime 1 starts after 7.5 hours. Overtime 2 starts 2 hours later after 9.5 hours. And overtime 3, we will say another 2 hours. Sorry, that's only 1 hour. 11:30, and we'll create that. Then, so the settings we have here say the first 7.5 hours are going to be assigned to normal hours, then the next 2 to overtime 1, the next 2 to overtime 2, next 2 to overtime 3. If we wanted all overtime hours to be on a specific time, we just wouldn't add anything there, and I'll change it to that. So if we set that, if we blank that out and we update it, what that means now is that the first 7.5 hours will be normal time. All hours after that will be at the overtime 1 rate. So our next setting here is jobs, breaks and departments. These are tags that are applied or can be applied to times or can be entered on the terminal or phone. The jobs, we've entered just a whole lot of made up jobs here. Breaks, we've entered 2. Locations, buildings within the organisation. Departments might be cost centres and things like that. They don't mean anything. They are just tags that are assigned, which would then be exported to your payroll program where they might mean something. Devices and identifiers. At the moment we have 1 mobile phone attached, and we've got 2 terminals, ClickClock terminals. One on the wall, one on the, it's called a demo. So we can put any name that we like into these things. So the last time the ClickClock communicated with that particular phone was 2 days ago. The 2 terminals here about half an hour ago. We can register new devices or invite employees, but we'll get onto that later. The final settings screen is ClickClock settings. The first group of settings here are to do with the ClickClock terminals. We have various modes that the terminal can operate in. Simple mode is what we suggest that people start with. It disables these following options here, but what it means is that the terminal only lets people clock in and out. So they tap their NFC tag on the terminal. If they're already clocked in, it'll clock them out. If they're already clocked out, it'll clock them in. And the terminal communicates with ClickClock to determine whether somebody's in or out. The other mode that we can set it to is normal mode. Now we can enable separate prompts on the terminals, and I'll change a setting here. We will allow optional settings of optional entry of jobs. So the person clocks, when they tap their tag on the screen, the terminal will then prompt them to select or enter a job number. We can have optional or we can have mandatory. In the particular case of job mode, we've also got a customer requested that they be able to enter only numeric job numbers, or we can disable job mode, which is the mode that we've got it in now. So what we'll do, we'll just set that to optional. No, let's set it to mandatory, and we'll save that. So that setting will now be set to the terminal. or terminals that you've got. This particular screen controls all the terminals. We can also override it for particular terminals. So we could also prompt people to enter a department or a location, and we could add a third button to the screen, which besides the clock in and clock out button, to signal that they've gone on a break. We'll show you that when we're looking at the terminal. So the terminal settings as well, we have a message that's shown at the top of the front screen of the terminal, which is welcome to ClickClock by ASP Microcomputers in this case. We can specify the time and date formats on the screen. At the moment they are set to show AM and PM and the date in this particular format. The manual shows you how to change this to other formats. You might want 24-hour time, for example, on the screen. The terminal itself also has its own settings screen to allow you to set up Wi-Fi and a time zone and things like that. We can put a password, effectively a PIN, in here to control the access to that screen on the terminal. For our payroll, the next part of this screen, or final part of this screen, is the payroll settings. We set the display period to 14 days. And you may recall when we looked at the adjustment screen that it showed 14 days worth of data. That's because of this. So you'd set that to your pay period time. Our payroll export is what on the report screen where we export the payroll, the format that it's going to export it in. At the moment, we have ADP Payforce. We have two forms of KeyPay because KeyPay has two particular files. One of them, you just export the total number of hours worked. The other one, you export the actual times. So different companies have different requirements for that. MYOB account right and zero payroll as well. With the first three, the export is done via a text file. So ClickClock creates a text file and you then import that into your payroll program. With MYOB account right and zero payroll, we directly communicate with the cloud-based system. So there's no need to send files and things. We can set the time zone of the computer here that we're looking at ClickClock settings for. So for example, we might go away on holidays to a different time zone, but we still want to look after our ClickClock employees. We would leave this set to our home time zone rather than some other time zone the computer might be sent to. And we can set the start day of the week. Okay, whenever we make any changes here, we hit the save button. I won't do that at the moment because I made some changes here. I also have another, you might have noticed, an import scan setting. That's only in my version, you don't get that. That allows me to import test data directly into the program. Employee status screen shows you employees who are clocked in and clocked out. So if I just clock an employee in now, I've just done it on the terminal. Okay, and then we will go away from that screen, we'll come back in again. We'll see now that Mary James has clocked in 8 seconds ago. And if we do a second one, this is Ron Rock. And I'll press F5 to refresh the screen. We see Ron Rock is clocked in because I entered a job for job number 5. The other employees here, we can see, because this is my test database, they haven't clocked in and out for various numbers of days. There's nobody on a break at the moment. This screen automatically updates after I think it's every 2 minutes. So if we had just waited here, that information would have updated by itself, or you can hit F5 to update your browser screen immediately. That's about it. I will now show you the operation of the terminals and the mobile phones. I'm using a special program here to display the screen of the ClickClock terminal on my PC screen so you can get an idea of what it looks like. However, you won't be able to see me pressing buttons and holding tags and things against it, and my mouse cursor will appear when I should have been touching the screen of the terminal. So if I tap a tag on the bottom left hand corner of the terminal, NFC tag, because of the way that we set it up before, I now need to press the clock in button and I can select a job so that employee has been clocked in. Tap it on again. Because I'm already clocked in, now I have a clock out button as well. It tells me that the job that I was clocked in at is job 2000. Tells me my name at the top of the screen, and I can press the clock out button. Right, that's running in the normal mode. If I change the terminal to run in standard mode, in simple mode I should say, so I will just pause this for a moment. Change the terminal back to simple mode. So if I clock a different employee on in simple mode, you see they were already clocked in, so now they're clocked out. Next time I put the same card on, they're clocked in. Okay, terminal is pretty simple. It's actually an Android terminal. It can be wall mounted most easily. It has Wi-Fi and wired Ethernet, and it has power over Ethernet. So if you have power over Ethernet infrastructure, you don't even need to have a plug pack transformer on it. The terminal communicates with ClickClock, the cloud part of ClickClock, to get all its settings and things. If I tap on the screen here and select status, we'll see that this particular terminal is registered to Rock Industries. It's got an ID number. There are no records stored in the unit, and the last time it was refreshed was 41 seconds ago. I've got 10 employees, 7 locations, and you can see the rest of those numbers on the screen. And the operation mode is set to simple mode. In the top right hand area of the screen, there is a refresh button. When I do that, it communicates immediately with ClickClock Cloud to get the latest settings. If I change some settings in ClickClock Cloud, or add an employee, remove an employee, or whatever, it may take up to an hour for that information to be sent through to the terminal. If you want to send that information through immediately, you need to go to the terminal and tap the refresh button. But normally you would do, add employees or whatever, they wouldn't be starting until the next day. The other part of the screen here is the About screen, just tells you the version number of the software in the terminal and a copyright information and that kind of thing. There is also an admin mode where we have to type in a password, a PIN number, to gain access to the Wi-Fi settings and other settings. I'll just pause the program again while I type that in. Again, and we can see we are now in admin mode, so we can do device registration, we can change the volume and brightness, we've got some settings, we can register tags on the terminal, and we can see the status and about screen like we could in user mode. And at the top of the screen we can change back out of admin mode into user mode. Device registration lets you connect a terminal to a particular ClickClock Cloud company. Tag registration lets you scan a tag and apply it to an employee. And the settings screen lets you change the Wi-Fi, time zone and Ethernet settings. Okay, there's no need to go through those at the moment. We change back to user mode, and then if we wanted to go back into admin mode, we'd have to enter the password and everything again. So we don't want to do that. Incorrect password, we tap on it. and that's about it for the terminal. Now we also have a mobile phone app, runs very similarly to the terminal, and I will just pause this screen while I set all that up so that I can show you my mobile phone on the screen. Okay, back again with the mobile phone screen. Sorry it looks all long and thin on the screen there. It's not quite the dimensions of my phone, but it's pretty much the same. So you'll see we've got a clock in button. If we press the clock in button on the screen, it clocks us in and then changes to a clock out button. So that's pretty similar to the way the terminal operates, except that the clock in and the clock out stays on the screen. So it says we clocked in at 1:35 p.m. and the only option to us here is to clock out again. So we see we do that. This icon up the top up here tells us that the phone has a valid GPS signal, so it will be recording our location along with the times. This can also be yellow or red. If you've just turned your phone on, for example, the GPS might not be active yet, so it might show up red or yellow. Red means there's no signal, yellow means it's not a fantastic signal. So the accuracy of the location might be a little bit wrong. So we go to, there's a menu up the top up here where we can refresh like on the terminal. So if we happen to add some job numbers or something like that in ClickClock Cloud, we can refresh those things. We've got some settings here which basically tell us about notifications that appear on the screen. So we won't cover that at the moment. And there's also an option here to save the scans to a place where other programs can access them, which is not necessary with this particular app. Okay, if we change the settings on the in ClickClock to normal mode, then we would get a clock in and a clock out button here. And we would then have the ability to enter job numbers and all that kind of stuff.